It is perhaps the duty of every parent to consider what films they ought to introduce their children to. I wonder what's on your mental list. You don't have to be a mum or a dad necessarily to have a list of films that you think are important that you expose the next generation to. For me, on my list, high up there was The Truman Show. And happily, a couple of weeks back, managed to sit my daughters down. We watched The Truman Show a couple of times. It's a big film. In 1996, Jim Carrey film. I imagine many of you have seen it, but if you haven't, it features a character called Truman Burbank, who is living his life. He has been to college, he's met a girl, got married, he's got a job in an office, he bought a house, he's planning a holiday, he's perhaps considering having kids. And he finds himself with this nagging feeling that none of this adds up, that he looks at everything that's fallen into place around him, and it's not enough. It can't explain everything he's seeing. There must be more than what he's seeing around him. Brief spoilers at this point, if you want to. In Truman's case, there is a lot more going on around him than he realizes. His entire life has been engineered so that he's clueless to the fact that he's the star of a TV show that's broadcast around the world. Tonight, I want to see ourselves in that story. We are Truman Burbank. I want you to feel that sense that the world around us is not all that there is, that there's more beyond than what we see with our eyes. We need to open up this passage, Revelation chapter 2, starting from verse 8. I really think that Jesus wants us to see, to understand some of the realities of life, the things that are bigger, that are underneath, that are around what we experience day to day, despite us often having little sense of them. What I mean is this: if we take a passage like what we had read to us, what we've got in front of us, then and dump it into our culture, I feel like it makes very little sense. We've got a letter here written to Christians who are suffering, really suffering for the sake of what they believe. They are persecuted. They are thrown into prison. And the letter says not only that, there is more on the way, and that they should continue through it. This sounds absolutely terrible for their well-being. I imagine that their mental health is going to take an absolute hammering. Their physical health, certainly. Are they really living their best life? Is this Christianity that they've taken up, is it helping them towards their life goals? I don't think so. If anything, it seems to be bringing a whole lot of negativity into their lives, and they really should just move on and get out of there as soon as possible. It seems like madness. So that leaves us with two options. I think option one is we either dismiss it. It was written 2,000 years ago. It's outdated. It was to another culture, and it's kind of ridiculous here and now. Or option two, which I would go for, is that we let Jesus blow our small ideas wide open with what we've got written here tonight. The real difficulty, the trouble that we face, is that everything around us wants us really to believe that everything we see and experience, wants us to believe that this is all that there is. And that's really unhelpful. It's like bubble wrap round the head. It's safe, and it's probably quite cozy, but it's smothering, and it blinds you to what's really going on. So let's get our head down into it. If you have got a Bible in front of you, we're in Revelation chapter 2 still, or if you can get your eyes on that. We're starting at verse 8 and going through there. You will see that this is a letter written by Jesus or given from Jesus to a church in Smyrna, which is still there. Smyrna, it's called Izmir now, out in Turkey. It's currently the third largest city out in Turkey, and it was a big city at the time that this was written. It's the second one that we've looked at. If you have been able to join us through some of these evening services, it's the second letter we've been looking at from the start of Revelation, and right at the beginning of it, Jesus introduces himself. In the style of letters that were at the start of this, that he introduces himself and he lays himself out as the first and the last who died and came to life again. He sets out his credentials, his qualifications, his spectacular CV. Jesus says that he's seen it all from before the world began and right the way through to its end and beyond. He has been there and he has seen it. He says he's the one who died and came to life again. He's experienced everything between those two extremes, beyond and around them. And from this spectacular vantage point of having seen and done it all, he looks down on the situation in Smyrna and he sees all the details and he sees the context into which it fits. He sees the things that are happening around it as well. And he wants them to know that things that they see are both better and worse than they might have thought originally. They are grander and greater. Their life is being played out on a larger stage than they might have considered. So we're going to pick it apart by looking at three things. I should be clicking through. Here we go. So firstly, things are better. Things are better than you might think. Things are better than you might think. Now, this is really important message for the church in Smyrna. They are living lives, as we've said, of poverty, of persecution. They have been marginalized in their culture, shunned and hated. And if that's it, if this is the life that they've got to live, then why should they bother? Why go through so much anguish and heartache for the sake of so little? But Jesus comes to them because perspective changes everything. Things were, in fact, much, much better than they thought. Look with me at verse 9. Jesus tells them, I know your afflictions, I know your poverty, and yet, he says, you are rich. You are very, very rich. There is an inheritance. It is guaranteed and it is given to them. We can read about this elsewhere in the New Testament as well. We pick up from Paul in Ephesians chapter 1. This is verse 18. Paul is praying for another church. Similarly, really, Paul prays for them. He says that the eyes of their hearts might be opened, that they may be enlightened, in order that they may know the hope to which you have been called, the riches of his glorious inheritance in his holy people. See, this is the inheritance, these are the riches to which we have been called as well. But our problem, our situation, is almost completely opposite to the situation that the church in Smyrna found themselves. It's not necessarily simpler. In fact, it may be the same problem come out from the other direction. What I mean is that rather than being under so much persecution and pressure, we are perhaps at times so comfortable that we actually end up believing that we can have it all here and now. We're told that we can chase our dreams and claim our goals, and we have such small ambitions. We have such small ambitions. We chase after holidays and cars and restaurants and clothes and new phones and 1,000 little trinkets. But we are richer than we know. We are far too rich, really, to run after these little things. Imagine a boy walking up and down the path outside Poundland, and his eye catches this little crumpled up note on the floor, and he goes to grab it and finds it's £20, and he looks around and he scouts around. Nobody seems to have grabbed it. Nobody seems to have noticed it. Nobody seems to be looking for it. It seems to be his. So he dashes inside Poundland and he grabs a basket and he goes running around and he gets some fizzy drink and like a novelty towel and like some really bad batteries. They're terrible. And like a Mars bar that's slightly smaller than it would be in any other shop. And he runs up and he pays for all of this tat. And he's so excited. And well he should be. Unless that boy is Prince George, heir to the throne of Britain. In which case, what business has he got being so excited about a carrier bag from the pound shop full of junk? He's rich beyond anything we could imagine. He's got an inheritance coming that makes all of that seem rather silly. And yet, so often this is basically, I think, an image of how we live our lives. We are like the children of billionaires running around excited in the pound shop. Jesus tells us that we are rich. And Paul's prayer was that our eyes might be open because things are much, much better than we think. Secondly, things are worse than you think. Things are worse than you think. Look again at the passage. We're at verse 10. Jesus tells them, do not be afraid of what you are about to suffer. More suffering is on the way in the case of the church in Smyrna. There is prison to come. There is persecution. There may even be death. Don't get too hung up on the 10 days that it mentions in that verse. Like much of Revelation, it's more poetry than mathematics. It probably indicates a sort of a fixed, limited amount of time. But whatever the case, it was specific to them. It happened there and then. And it was really, really bad. It was really, really bad. But worse than what they're going to go through is the reality of who is behind it all. Jesus is clear. He says again, verse 10, I tell you, the devil will put some of you in prison to test you. Jesus is clear. This is Satan who is behind what they are going to suffer. Now, we got to spend a bit of time here because this feels a bit weird. We go all kinds of wrong often in our thinking about Satan and demons, but the Bible has stuff to say. There's a famous quote from C.S. Lewis that's worth sharing at this point. He says that there are two equal and opposite errors into which our race can fall about the devils. One is to disbelieve in their existence, and the other is to believe and to feel an excessive and unhealthy interest in them. They themselves are equally pleased by both errors and hail a materialist or a magician with exactly the same delight. Do you see what he's saying? There's a needle that must be threaded. There's a balance that we've got to try and find between, we need awareness, we need understanding, but we don't want to stray into unhealthy interest, into fascination. And I'd be willing to bet that not many of us are suffering from the fascination side of things. That's a little more unusual. Far more common is that we've got a sort of view that goes, oh, well, believing in Jesus and following him, well, that's one thing. I'm all right with that. But demons and the devil, that seems a little sort of outdated. It feels like a horror film, and we can put it in the same categories as witches and zombies. But Jesus here is in no doubt whatsoever. He wants us to know that Satan is real. I mean, he's met the guy. And he is working in some of the stuff that we see in the passage here. It's a reality. There is a personal and powerful and aggressive opponent to God and to his people. Is it really so hard to believe? I mean, if we've reached the point where we believe in God, who is a powerful, good, supernatural being, then there ought to be space to consider a supernatural, evil, personal being. I think our real problem, the reason why we struggle with this so much, is that we like to feel that we've got evil all figured out, potentially even, virtually eliminated. Evil people are really, really rare, we tell ourselves. I mean, I don't know whether I've ever met one. People might do bad stuff, but we tend to say that they need education, they need support. Evil is like a psychological problem. We need to understand these people. We need to help them understand themselves. Or evil is a sociological problem. It's about their situation and their circumstances, and these are the things that need to be addressed. And whilst both of those elements may be true, I'm not deriding them in any way, they're really not enough. They're really not enough. Our whole world is a place of cruelty and violence and war and prejudice and exploitation and unkindness. And some of the reasons for all of these things are very natural. They're grounded in people's thoughts and in the situations they find themselves in. But Jesus wants to know that there is a spiritual element to all of this, but beyond what we can see. And that means that any view that we might have that refuses to acknowledge the spiritual element to what is evil in the world, it is faulty without that. On this issue, Tim Keller says, until you recognize that dimension of evil in the world, you will not be able to understand its depth and its pervasiveness and its intractability. Now, Lucy Letby has been convicted of the murders of 7 babies and the attempted murder of 7 more at this point, with investigations still ongoing. And on a recent BBC article, they concluded with this. They said, even after 2 trials, questions about the nurse's character, motive, and psychology are still unanswered. Lucy Letby remains an enigma. So we've got a culture that can't understand evil. In fact, I looked through almost every BBC article about her, that never at any point did they refer to her as evil. Our society only has explanations that seem to fall short of explaining some of what we experience all around us. Now, don't mishear me, the Bible does not teach that every sin is simply Satan's work. That's by no means what I'm saying, but he is real and he is active, and so things are worse than we think. We ought to expect his powerful and aggressive influence in the world, especially when it comes to attacking the church. Elsewhere in the New Testament, you can read 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8. This is really, really helpful. Listen to this. Peter tells us, be alert and sober-minded. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. So we really need to understand this so that we are not defeated by this powerful evil. But I want to say this clear, we will not be defeated. We will not be defeated. How can we say that with any confidence? How can we stand against a supernatural enemy? How can we win when we're so dramatically outmatched? At times, we're completely unaware of the war that we find ourselves in. How can we possibly not be defeated under those circumstances? How can we win? Well, you can't. You can't fight this battle, but Jesus already has. Jesus already has. Look down at this. At the end of verse 10, the last words are of Jesus. He says, I will give you life as your victor's crown. Like a medal round your neck, Jesus will give victory to those who are faithful. You do not have to win this. You are not asked to win this. You are not capable of winning this. There's a song where the chorus sings, I'm fighting a battle that you've already won. They killed Jesus, and he still won. He is awesome. He is powerful, and he is good, and he has defeated Satan. Satan is scary. Suffering and persecution are beyond describing. But God is bigger. God is stronger than anything that could ever go wrong. To quote Awesome Cutlery. We may suffer, we may die, but we only have to follow. This is the whole message of Christianity. If this is a bit new to you and you feel like we've gone right in at the deep end with all this Satan stuff, if Christianity is even vaguely unfamiliar to you, then let me spell it out as plain as I can. The world and us in it are messed up and broken through what we have done. It is worse than you think, but Jesus has done everything necessary in order to give us the victory. And all we have to do now is follow our captain. Things are better than we think, and things are worse than we think. And thirdly and finally, a bit shorter this time, things matter more than you think. Things matter more than you think. They tend to say, when you're dead, you're dead. And many are motivated by that certainty. This is sort of the driving force of their life. You only live once has become a mantra for so many, and so they look to make the most of the one life that they have. Get everything you can, because one day it will be your last and you want to be able to look back with no regrets. I could write 100 blogs filled with all this junk, but it is not true. It's not true. Jesus here tells us that it's not true. And he's got every right to tell us that it's not true, because Jesus has died. He has been there. He uniquely has seen it and experienced it, and now he is alive and is here to tell us. So verse 11, look what he says, at the end of the bit that we were reading. The one who is victorious will not be hurt at all by the second death. And that's where we need to stop and understand what he's talking about, because things matter more than we think. One day I will die, and that will be my first death. And set in the mind of God awaits a day for those who are alive now, and also for those who have already experienced their first death and are there waiting. If we read Hebrews chapter 9, verse 27, says the following: people are destined to die once, and after that, to face judgment. And this is what we're finding referred to here in our passage in Revelation. Later in the book of Revelation, chapter 20, verse 14, if you're writing these down, that's Revelation 20:14. Says this: then death and Hades were thrown into the lake of fire. The lake of fire is the second death. Anyone whose name was not found written in the book of life was thrown into the lake of fire. Now, for many, many, many people, things would be so much simpler if we were just heading to one death and then nothing. You could live a life which is all about doing what feels good, getting what you can, being who you want to be. But even if just for a moment we listen to Jesus, then death is just a gateway. It's a step onto the next stage of existence. If this life is only about setting us up for what is to come, then we ought to live it by an entirely different set of priorities. Rather than living for what feels good now, I need to know that my life is written in the book of life. My name is written in the book of life. Rather than getting what I can, I need to know that my name is in the book of life. Rather than being who I want to be, I need to know that my name is written in the book of life. We must hear Jesus on this. He is the only authority. And still, until someone else wants to stand up and say that they have died and seen it and come back to tell us what there is, we need to listen to him. In chapter 1, 2 weeks ago, Jesus introduced himself. He said, "Do not be afraid. I am the first and the last. I am the living one. I was dead, and now look, I am alive forever and ever. I hold the keys of death and Hades." So things are better than we think. Things are worse than we think. Things matter more than we think. More often than not, it's not what we think, because so rarely do we see things as they are. So often we're wrapped up in life, and we need Jesus to blow wide open our perspective. So two things to try and apply from this, two things to try and take away. Number one, what we read from Peter. Be alert and be sober-minded. Be alert and sober-minded. Be on your guard against the devil, because he is creative and busy trying to distract us, trying to cloud our vision of how things really are. He is a liar, consistently and reliably a liar, and he wants to deceive and throw us off track. Stand firm with the belt of biblical truth around your waist. Read the Bible, have it open, look out for your brothers and sisters. Stand firm, be alert and sober-minded. Number 2, and this is straight out of our reading today. Take this bit away from you, middle of verse 10. Be faithful. Be faithful, even to the point of death, and I will give you life as your victor's crown. Be faithful. Tomorrow, for me, it's the first day, really, first real day of our summer holidays. Which is great, it's wonderful. And it will be, I know, it will be so easy to spend that day not thinking about a victor's crown, not thinking about Satan and a second death that is to come. And that's okay in some ways. But if by God's grace, he answers my prayers and my eyes remain open to this perspective, to what we've read here and seen tonight, if I can keep that in my mind, then I trust I will enjoy the good things that are to come, whatever they may be, but not expect them, not demand them, because I know that there is more to come. I know that there's a greater victory to be had. Every good thing that may come my way will be a foretaste of the victory that is not yet mine. I will be on the guard for things to be hard. In some ways I will expect that, and that's okay. I will be motivated by an awareness of the second death to introduce people to the one and only Saviour who has got any chance of addressing their needs in the face of that second death. Last time I had the privilege of standing up to preach, it was Romans 8. So it seems fitting to finish with words from there again. So let me just close by reading these to you. Paul writes, I consider that our present sufferings, or present joys, we could say, I consider that our present sufferings and joys are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. As it is written, for your sake we face death all day long. We are considered as sheep to be slaughtered. No, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. For I am convinced that neither death nor life, nor angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord.